Hello, I am Paolo. I am the Master of Ceremonies here at IICSR, and I can't wait to have you here to learn together how to learn sustainability and make this planet better. Come to see how beautiful is the place where you're going to be.
Amazing, huh? I wanted to build a more inclusive world. That's why I joined IICSR.
Hi, I am Venu Tiwari. I have joined IICSR postgraduate course on CSR and sustainability. I wanted to learn about ESG, CSR and SDGs. IICSR has the best faculty for this course.
Shadi, the air quality index in Delhi is 216 today. It's the worst possible air quality index.
That's really too much, and we all have to do something to climate change.
We all want to build a sustainable and inclusive world, and IICSR is the only place which is training you all. Come join us.
Hello, welcome back everyone. I want to take it back as a sustainable. Have you heard this term called sustainability or multiple time in last after COVID pandemic? It has been boom that this is sustainable product. This is sustainability. We are launching sustainable supply chain. Many a time we have heard this term called sustainability. So sustainability has this triple bottom line, which is like planet, people, planet, profit, which is also integrated into the ESG as a environment, as a planet, and S social as a people, and G as a governance, which is obviously the businesses which makes a profit from it. So we are using these three resources, or we are interconnected between these three P's, and which called as a triple bottom line. So I would like to invite our panel member to discuss about this jargons about ESG, how ESG can be integrated into the business, how can integrate, because of integrating ESG, how can business make profit. Also, there are a lot of rating and reporting framework. You will learn in your course structure that there are so many frameworks, and rating companies are coming up with a different sort of scores and framework. So we can start with this lecture and have a proper perspective from the horse's mouth. So I'll invite our moderator Harsha and panel member Mr. Jangu Dalal, co-founder CEO of Go Eva. Our Vidya, she's a ESG professional with 12 years. Sorry for that. Okay, sorry for that. Really sorry. Our Mr. Vidya, ESG professional, having a 12 years of experience in this field. Mr. Narendra Tiwari, having 10 years of experience in this field. Mr. Pratik Patra, 14 years of experience. All of them are from Big Four, PwC, Deloitte, and EY, and I must have missed some. EY, PwC, Deloitte, and what is the fourth one? KBMG. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
So it's quite something for me to moderate all of them. Clearly. Thank you for joining all of us, and it's a very erudite and well-learned panelists that we have today. And I would also like to thank all of them for contributing their time to impart the knowledge of decades of years that they have been in the industry, and considering to further the cause of ESG and building more responsible practitioners for all of us and for the India Inc. Well, ESG is a very broad term, and I would like to start with Mr. Vidyanath. As ESG is a vast subject, how do you think that companies can integrate them all? And because it's too many things, together. Any steps that you would recommend?
Right. When we speak about integrating ESG into the company's operations, right? As even in the previous panel discussion, it was clearly mentioned that there's a hairline difference between what sustainability is and what ESG is, right? Companies or even any individual needs to understand the difference. I'll just give a brief outline about what sustainability is and what ESG is. Sustainability is basically seen as a concept that is being integrating into the organizations or maybe individuals mindset. So concept or a mindset, right? ESG is to the specific points. It can be which is measurable, which is quantifiable. So that is what ESG is. Now another outlook is sustainability is a basically that is impacting, sorry, a company or individual or investment firm is impacting the world. That is what sustainability, that is an outlook, so outward looking perspective. And ESG is how the world or global entities or investments is impacting the company is ESG. That's an inward looking basically. So this is a small difference for your basic understanding, because sustainability and ESG are interchangeably used. People get confused what ESG is and what sustainability is. Just for your understanding, I'm just giving a slight difference, or which is very much prominent in nature. And now the topic is very much huge. I don't say it's whatever you speak about, be it companies' operations or any initiatives, be it environment related, social related, or governance related, or even financial related. Everything falls under the umbrella of sustainability as a concept, right? So what I see sustainability as a bigger umbrella, and all under different functions or initiatives or departments would fall under the umbrella of sustainability. So here once you understand the concept, that is very much easier for any organizations to take next steps to integrate these sustainability concepts, right? When we we have a lot of topics, right? So for example, environment, we have energy consumption or emissions, or biodiversity, or water management, or waste management, or effluence management. There are multiple aspects to it. Similarly, under social, we have CSR, health and safety, HR practices, human resources, and also human rights, and also the supply chain elements. And governance, we have many things which are anti-corruption, anti-bribery, code of conduct. So these are all compliance-related elements. This needs to be, basically it should be a mandatory thing as a regular. It has to be ticking the box type for most of the organizations in India at least. But that is not sufficient enough for a company to go beyond the regulations. So that's when you see, basically it's a kind of facade that you have. When you do the checklist part, you need to come out of the what do you call it? It's the curtain to see what sustainability really is. So that's where you are impacting the stakeholder perspective. So the first step, what companies needs to look at is to understand themselves. Where do they stand, right? For example, they need to identify what are the gaps in their operations. It can be in the policy area, or it can be in the SOPs, or it can be deficit in reaching their compliance levels or regulatory requirements, or it can be the focus when compared to the peer groups, because some of the peers might be very much advanced in terms of sustainability performance or in their journey. These are some of the gaps that needs to be identified. That is like company needs to understand themselves first. Then a company needs to identify and prioritize these gaps and rectify it accordingly. So that's when you're there's a gap, you're bridging the gap by putting a lot of initiatives, or developing policies, or implementing, or taking some actions. And third one is on developing a strategy to implement such things. So it will not For example, any company does not have any magic wand in their hands. Just snap of finger, it will happen. They get very bigger ratings or very good ratings. Um, so it's not an overtime thing, not overnight thing. So it takes a lot of time for any company to achieve such goals or targets, or achieve sustainability on the business perspective. So companies, needs to develop in that. There's a, in a nutshell, I'm, giving you a brief about this, but maybe during the course of 3 months, you'll learn about how, in detail, how to, integrate sustainability concepts in the operations, and so that's how, we need to look at it. And any questions that you have, feel free to ask, please.
Yeah. So my question to you is that can you cite an example of any manufacturing concern? Maybe a cement company. Thank you. Maybe a cement company, or maybe a manufacturing concern like Godrej and Boys. So what kind of real strategies, which was just mentioned at the start of the session, that what real practical strategies were implemented which would achieve the real results. So can you cite an example?
I would also add to
Maybe-
that, how much impetus is being given to each E, S, or G to be the best performer on indexes, for example, high ranking on DJSI, on what could be the distribution and importance of each. I guess your question is on the similar lines.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my next question.
So I'd like to highlight, we don't have any clear bifurcation of the contribution of E, S, and G for any company, right? So it depends on the company in which sector they are operating in, or the initiatives that they have in, or what is the purpose, or what leadership has in place to take it forward, right? Majorly, the sector would define the contribution of ES or G, right? So there's no standard thing as of now. For example, I have worked with an organization, government of Qatar in the Middle Eastern region. So their major focus was into social governance. Environment is pretty much zero there. Majorly, I was working on the human rights element, which is on worker welfare compliance. So there, the major focus was into social part, not even health and safety, majorly on human rights focus. So there, the governance and social element has higher contribution towards it, but environment has very lesser, prominence in that particular, organization or the project, right? So when we talk about any particular sector, for example, cement sector or construction industry, let's speak about that. So there are a lot of issues, be it environmental issues, or be it social issues. For example, the project which I was mentioning for FIFA World Cup 2022, there's a lot of fatalities that has happened in the last 10 years. There was about 6,500 deaths in the last 10 years. So, but I mean, this is on the negative side. But on the positive side, if we see, there's a significant improvement in terms of the worker welfare development. 10 years ago, when the when they have entered into the taking care of the workers, right? They their accommodation was not at all good. Like I don't say the worst, but it is lesser than worst, right? Worst accommodations, and salaries are very less. It's not even comparable to the IT industry markets or something like that. But there's no IT sector majorly in the Middle East region, but. And also the comfort of the workers and a freedom of movement, right? Passport retention is one of the key issue where employers take your passports and they'll not let you leave anywhere. It's kind of bonded labor, right? So that is an issue. And child labor is a no question there, because unless you are of legal age, you are not. There's no problem there. But bonded labor is a severe issue. But in the last 10 years, the government has made a lot of changes in terms of providing a lot of worker welfare related benefits, such as annual return airfare, for the employees or the workers, or providing the reimbursement, recruitment reimbursement, because a lot of workers, from the South Asian region go to Middle East to earn more money because of the less taxes or other benefits. But they used to pay a lot of money for the recruitment agencies, right? So they pay about 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs at one time, but they don't get that much now in returns. So it is contractor's responsibility or the employer's responsibility to return that amount or bear such expenses, right? So that has been significant change. All the contractors or employees has got their reimbursement of their fee that they have paid to the agencies. This is a significant one. And third one is on passports or their national ID cards or their bank cards, literally ATM cards. Everything is under the employees or workers' possession. Previously, it was under the contractor's handhold. So these are all significant changes when I talk about one particular example. It can be Expo 2020 Dubai or FIFA World Cup 2022 or maybe next Asian Games that would come up in the next couple of years. So there's a significant change that happened in the Middle Eastern region. However, it's on a positive side. But on the negative side, as I said, there are about 6,500 fatalities. And there's another point which I need to highlight here is, when there is a fatality or an employee dies, there should be a compensation, be it Workmen's Compensation Act or such as they need to get some compensation as a relief for them, for the family members. But in the region, there's a land of law, which is Sharia law, which no offense, but they do not see insurance as a benefit, but they look it as a kind of liability that they are getting in return for purchasing a insurance policy. So they see it as a risk, religiously, but that has been overcome by the regulations, because that is a mandatory one, right? So your mindset has changed. So that is significant change that is happening, which is very well taken. And now I'll give another example, right? There's a mining company in Tamil Nadu, right, in Tuticorin. I don't want to name the company, but it has been shut down maybe 10, 12 years ago because of violations in environmental regulations in India. And there was a lot of protests because of the environmental pollution that this organization is causing to the nearby localities. There were stampedes. There were about 100 to 150 or 200 people have died in that stampede, and the company was shut down 10 years ago. It was not open yet, but after the COVID thing, during the COVID, maybe if I can say, in the last 10 years, the local communities would have, a negative impression on that company. And when we look at one particular instance, during the COVID pandemic, there is a shortage of, breathable oxygen, right? So most of the companies have tried to, manufacture oxygen. That organization have, they made a tie-up with the government that we don't want to open the, the manufacturing unit, but we will manufacture breathable oxygen and we will give it for free. That has given a positive opinion to the local communities, and maybe we can call it as a sentiment, people would have. So that the negative impression has, yeah, that's changed. Not completely, but yeah, because that's a step that the organization has taken. So when there is an impact on the company, so then they have to be, they reacted actually. But companies nowadays should be more proactive in nature instead of reactive.
I want to share one more example. You asked for, if I got you right, you asked for a practical example where such considerations have been embedded into a business strategy or a operation strategy, right? So we know that in the logistics sector, drivers who especially drive long duration vehicles, they are pushed to limits. They drive 12 hours, 14 hours in a day, and the fatigue and tiredness results in a lot of accidents on the roads, right? So if you, I guess many of you have heard of this company called Rivigo. So what it did was, so it came up with a new model, right, where its drivers don't drive more than 8 or 10 hours in a day, right? And so what happens if there is a long haul that has to be made, right, across a couple of days? So the way the route plan is decided by the company is in such a way that a driver would never have to stay overnight somewhere far away from their own hometown, right? So driver A goes to the next location, hands over the vehicle to driver B, right, and then picks up the return vehicle from that location back to his or her base location, right? So this is how. So if we were to understand, right, the company addressed one challenge in the logistics industry. And if you see, you would have seen that the government of India has also made certain policy level changes, right, where they have said that trucks and all need to have air-conditioned cabins, right? So holistically, things, these are the practical examples that we see. One sector we can consider, and so forth. You see in a lot of other sectors as well. That was an example that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, Prateek. My next question goes to Jangu sir. So governance plays a very vital role. What are the major issues? Although you are a proponent that we have the best governance system, but still there is a lacuna. And how do you think, and what are those indicators that our corporates should have in order to match the international best standards, so that we go, we rank better also?
Sure. Thanks. So Harsha, one small correction. I said we have the best laws. Even in terms of our Indian Penal Code, we do have the best laws, but implementation is a slightly different story altogether. But before I get into that, your question, I just want to get all of us, try and get all of us on the same page as it concerns G or governance. So as much as there are myths around ESG and everyone understands it differently, and my friend Ashish also referred to that, if you take an elephant and 8 blind men, they'll give different definitions. ESG is kind of in that space. And within that, I think governance is also highly misunderstood. So governance is nothing to do with just the board or the management. I always believe that whenever you're in doubt about any concept, instead of going to any technical manual, go to the English dictionary. So, and I truly mean that. So if you go to the dictionary and see the dictionary meaning of govern or governance is how you run things, how you manage things, how you run your processes and systems. So the G in governance is nothing but how enterprises run, manage, not just their boards and other things, but their way of being, their entire purpose of being, the way they manage their environment systems, the way they manage their social systems, the way they manage their human resources, all parts of the organization. So governance very often gets mistaken with some board level stuff and all. Fundamentally, in the spirit of ESG and even in the letter of ESG, if you see a lot of the frameworks, it's all about how you run, manage, and govern your business. So I would say for any ESG program or journey for any organization to succeed, all of these are very interlinked, E, S, and G. You can't just do one and make any progress at all. It would be like you're in an auto rickshaw of 3 wheels and 1 or 2 wheels are missing. That thing's not going anywhere, right? Now, specifically to Harsha's question on governance, fundamentally, whatever you do on the ESG journey, governance becomes like the baseline. How you're running it, how you're measuring it, how you're monitoring it. And because it's so subjective, what is hearteningly happening now is that there are norms coming where you can start measuring and monitoring this. And ESG from an enterprise perspective, and finally, in this room as practitioners, even on the Zoom call, let us be very clear. We work for enterprises, we work for organizations, we do some business or the other, some livelihood or the other, and ESG has to intermesh within that, right? It cannot exist in isolation. So governance, ESG is all about what are your risks and opportunities. As a business person, as an entrepreneur, as a company, as a stakeholder, I am doing something today. What may happen which may destroy it? Or what are the opportunities which I can harness which will give me greater wealth, greater prosperity, greater happiness, whichever way you want to measure success. So governance, like in anything else, is very often better explained in absence than in presence. Right? From childhood, we have been told be honest, but we don't really know what is honesty till someone is dishonest to us. Am I making sense? Right? And if you look at examples of governance, and finally I must confess I'm a bit of a capitalist. So for me everything boils down to value. One of the biggest destroyers of value, of corporate value, investor value, individual value is lack or failure of governance. For example, globally, Enron was such a huge thing which collapsed overnight, and billions of dollars of individual investors, societal money, community money, government money got wiped out. Our friend Priyanka referred to Satyam, which was like a turning point for corporate governance. Our regulators woke up. But if you look at it, it destroyed enormous amount of wealth. If you come a little closer to our Indian history, and I can name this company very openly because everybody talks about it. If you look at ILFS, Infrastructure Leasing and Financial Services, if you look at the genesis, why was that organization started? It was started with a very noble purpose to create infrastructure within the country, and for that you needed large amounts of long-term finance, and there was a body which was missing to do that, so they came into existence for that. But the amount of governance failures which happened over there, right from the board to the MD to the CEO and every aspect of the organization. So that governance failure was not the board failing or this didn't happen or regulator didn't see this. That whole purpose of being, the whole purpose of managing, the way of managing that business went awry. And it destroyed enormous wealth. It ran into hundreds of thousands of crores. Even today, a lot of it is still not recovered. It's gone forever. Right? That's pure investor wealth. Very recently, we had a very large marquee Indian bank in the private sector, Yes Bank. A lot of people would have invested in that bank as retail shareholders when the share must have been 100, 200, whatever it was. Overnight, it just collapsed. And if you look at it, why did it collapse? Pure and simple lack of governance, right? Now, who's responsible? Was it the CEO? Was it the board sleeping? Did the regulator not see, etc., etc., etc.? There are many causes and reasons we can find out, but essentially it was a lack of governance which destroyed thousands of crores of investor wealth. And there are many such examples where you can see how lack of governance destroys value. Vice versa, perceived, not even executed, sometimes even perceived excellence in governance gives you a lot of value. So if you are a person who's following the stock markets or investing over there or seeing over there, companies which are perceived to be better governed, better managed will always get a premium vis-a-vis their peers in the same industry, same business who are not perceived to be better managed, right? Our friend Tejashree and Godrej and Boyce was a great example of that. Consistently they get a premium because of their practices, or the Tatas or Infosys or HDFC and so on and so forth, right? The company which he referred to, which had this copper smelt actually in Tuticorin, if you look at fundamentally what their business is, extremely strong. From a national contribution perspective, that company contributes a huge amount to our country. You know, the plant which he was referring to in Tuticorin is a copper smelter. India consumes a lot of copper. We are a growing economy. We have to put wires everywhere. We have to put everything everywhere, right? Before that smelter came in, we were 80% dependent on imports. By that one particular facility in Tuticorin, our imports came down to about 40-50%. And when it shut, we are back again to that. So that's a big national loss, isn't it? And when it was in operation, it was contributing fundamentally and beautifully to the economy. But governance, social practices, and that organization is completely gone, right? You can keep creating oxygen, etc., but the fact is that plant at its peak was giving employment to 1,500 people. The larger ecosystem, value chain, suppliers, vendors, people in the town providing food service, transport service, this service, ancillary employment of around 5,000 was lost. 1,500, 5,000, all of that gone. And turnover, revenue, bottom line, everything gone. What was the single largest cause? Governance. That governance practices which could in turn manage the risks and opportunities around social upheaval, environment impacts, etc., were probably not the best over there. So I hope I'm able to answer your question and some of you also get an idea. We'll probably learn more and more as we go along, but fundamentally don't get confused with governance as some high-flying board level stuff. It is just about the way you run, manage your activities on a day-to-day basis.
Mr. Jangu, one question I have, like as you keep repeatedly saying, governance is not being run by the board or the CEOs or CXOs. I really wish to differ there because the governance will be more like the policies, the investments, and your line of business or your strategical way of doing business, which are all done either by the board or probably the CXOs. So when you say that governance is not necessarily about the board or the CXOs, what else you think can go up to the level of hurting governance if these two are not the case?
So maybe I didn't communicate rightly. What I meant was it's not a sufficient condition to have a good management and a board. It's probably a necessary condition. It has to be a culturally ingrained thing where everybody in the organization marched to a certain beat. The ILFS board actually was very good. On paper, all of those gentlemen and ladies were having great resumes, right? So that's what I mean. It's not enough to have the greatest boards on paper, etc., etc. And finally, I think whether it's E, S, G, governance, whatever you take, it is not about the compliance. That is the letter of the law.
Just to give a
It is a spirit and substance.
Yeah.
So unless we all imbibe that ESG, environment, social, governance, is about the spirit and substance, not about the law. Let's not get hung up on GRI or BRSR or LOD. Those are all end results. If you're doing everything well, your GRI will come out quite well. Your BRSR will fill up on its own. Your LODR, there won't be major issues. I hope I've answered.
I just wanted to give little clarity to the audience also. Like he was asking about giving some example, and for instance, he quoted Redigo. But then the business could not be sustained, right? Whatever they did, they're nowhere now. So I just wanted to quote a different example because it'll be good for all of us to understand, how the governance gets into business practices and, how it can turn around. Like microfinance is one of the very important domains, in the fintech area where you are actually loaning the ones who are deprived of their own, say they don't have a bank account, they don't have a fixed income and all that. So microfinance as an industry is meant for people who don't have their own financial entity. So it comes with a business model of charging higher interest. It's the permissible one because maybe 50% you cannot recover the loan. So obviously you have to somewhere factor it, so the interest rates are very high. So before regulations, again, it's like every time we wake up when something happened. After Cyrus Mithri dies, we talk about belt, right? Before that, we don't do it. So after Union Carbide blast, then we talk about gas. So same way, I think I'm taking time. We can proceed. Yeah.
Thank you. It's quite an interactive session, which is really nice to know. And but we still have some time constraints. So yeah, maybe if someone can just tell the hotel staff. My next question is for Narendra and Prateek. Now, you all are talking about financial benefits of ESG. So does embedding ESG in business really add long-term value, and what financial benefits have you seen? Any case studies that you all would like to cite right now? And also, what is a major play of indexes when the ratings happen? And so how much impetus do investors give to them?
Let me take this question from Harsha. So, and before I answer your questions, I wanted to comment on what you mentioned, the MFI, right? While the interest rates are higher there compared to a traditional bank interest rate, what we've seen in the market is that the informal sources from where such kind of customers used to take loan from, the MFI charge a substantially lower interest rate compared to the informal sector. So that is the advantage that they bring in, and that is also a very valid use case of ESG being embedded, right? And a lot of these loans that are given in India as well are unsecured loans, so which makes it much more easier for people who have not been exposed to financial sector getting a chance to come into the formal financial sector. Right? And to come back to Harsha's question, so I can cite one example where it's an Indian example for Apollo Hospitals. So so they follow an hub and spoke model for the hospitals, right? So you have a major hospital, then you have smaller clinics and pharmacies that assist the overall healthcare, their healthcare proposition. And so most of the times you've seen that in the in the healthcare sector, the doctors, they charge fees on a per consultation, right? Per consultation they charge fees, and that is how they get remunerated. Now, if Apollo were to open a new hospital, they had this challenge that they could not retain doctors for a longer period of time, because initially the walk-ins would be less, they would not be paid well. So to address the attrition challenge, what they did was that for the initial 1 or 2 years, they would offer the doctors a fixed salary, right, for a period of 12 or 24 months, that ensured that the doctors and the talent is there with them, right? So whenever customers walk in, patients walk in, they will be catered to, right? And there is the business model doesn't get impacted. And once the the particular hospital has established itself, they used to move, the remuneration method would move back to what is followed in the industry at large, which is per consultation. So this is one example how they looked at one challenge and they addressed it with a solution. And that is what this especially has been a case study which even UNEP FI has quoted in one of its publications. So it's a quite interesting example. And coming to the next question that she asked about how indexes play a role, I want to give a slight twist to the way I would answer this question. While there are indexes, right, which say that a certain portfolio companies are green, right, or they embed ESG into their business models, and so they are highly rated in terms of ESG. That is not necessarily true, right? I can quote few examples here as well. And we have to be very careful when we just blindly, and this is what we were discussing just before this session, that blindly accepting an external indication of a ESG score or an ESG understanding is not really, is never going to be helpful, because those considerations that we take in from the other sources, they may not necessarily align to my, as an entity, my ESG vision, my business strategy, everything else, right? So one example was the start of pandemic. We saw that lot of investment, lot of green funds had investments in tech companies like Google, Microsoft, and they come onto the lens that while they are tech, they were perceived to be green. Lot of their data warehouses and they were run on coal-fired power plants, right? Coal energy or other fossil fuel energy, and that brought them to limelight. And so that's when you would have seen that just when the pandemic was, the first wave was going on, a lot of these companies came out saying, we will meet aggressive net zero timelines, right? They're moving on to, they committed definite timelines for moving into renewable energy or alternate energy solutions. Because that was the fear that they had, right? That they may lose out on investments or funds, which is essentially required for them. that is one example, right? Why indexes don't really give you a true picture. We'll have to take everything with a pinch of salt. The second example that I wanted to quote is on regulations. All this while we've been discussing that there is compliance requirement and there is regulations which is required. Yes, it is, but the market is smart enough to play it around as well, right? So we had, we've seen the European countries, the European regulators taking a step ahead, right, in terms of the other regulators on ESG, climate risk, etc., right? So there was a regulation, so there is a regulation called SFDR, and is especially focused on asset management companies to disclose whether, when they say they have invested in sustainable companies or it's a sustainable fund, whether it is indeed a sustainable fund or not, right? So it had certain parameters which they have to disclose, and then basis that they would be classified whether their fund meets the sustainability definition or is aligned to sustainability definition of SFDR. Now, what lot of the funds they did, they just tweaked the way they answered certain questions, and because of that, they moved from not compliant to closely aligned, right? And lot of these companies were incorporated into a Morningstar index, and when later on they realized, Morningstar realized that this is not exactly so their own filtering standards were quite more stringent than SFDR, and so they then delisted some of these companies which were classified as closely aligned and part of the index. They their classification, they withdrew those companies out of that. So these are the examples that I wanted to share, and it again, to reiterate the point, just having a score or having some company or a fund classified as green does not really mean it is green. We'll have to do a level 2, level 3 kind of a deep dive analysis to understand really, and to allude to what Priyanka in the first session mentioned, that a lot of these investors, they engage with the companies, investing companies, their management, to really understand whether what is it that they're doing to address some of the challenges that they're facing, and that is what is giving the direction for them to design or to manage their portfolio.